respectful, so.
Okay, okay. All right, Kurt's on board.
All right then.
My wife's here. Kurt's here. And we're streaming now.
Okay. So it's 1 o'clock.
Yes.
So we can start. Kurt, can you see the screen where it says Jayanilo Premadana?
Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. I'm going to attempt to sing this. I'm not the. I shouldn't say that. You should never say in a public gathering that you're not, something. But anyway. Jayanilo Premadana Karuna Prachur Jena Prabhu Kota Gela Chajataku Amoda Charu Rupa Kasanatan Ahadasa Raghunata Patita Pavan Rahamora Bhakta Yuga Ahakavila Eka Kale Kotha Gela Gaurana Taras Ashane Putibo Mata Anale Patibo Goranga Gunera Midhi Kota Gile Pabo Seshabasangira Sange Je Koilo Vila Sheshangana Paya Kande Narosamodas Jayanilo Prema Dhana Guruna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chajataku Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Viti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Deshataride Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Bhakti Charu, Jai Bhakti Charu, Jai Bhakti Charu, Jai Bhakti Charu. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Utaleshana Bhakti Vedanta Samniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavam Charani Nirvashri Ashwati Desapara. So this song is normally, we sing this song when there's a disappearance of a great devotee. I'll read the words and then talk about it a little bit. It may seem a little foreign. Excuse me. It may seem a little bit esoteric, but let me do my best to bring it into the realm of our everyday life. So it starts, Ye anilo prema dhana karuna prachur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy. Where has such a personality as Advaita Acharya gone? Where are my Sarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Dasa, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of those devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. This is, Narottam Das, first of all, is perhaps the greatest poet, or considered to be the greatest poet in our line, especially because of his sentiments. He sings here about, let me go back, number 1, 2, 3, 4. He sings here about Advaita Acharya, Sarup Damodar, Rupa, Sanatan, Raghunath Das, and Lord Chaitanya. None of these personalities, Narottam Das came to Vrindavan after all of these persons had left. And he was then associated with Jiva Goswami and Gopal Bhatta Goswami and others who were, I think, maybe Raghunath Das Goswami. So here he says in his prayer, Raghunath Das Goswami, but in general, he was not associated with the original associates of Lord Chaitanya, nor did he ever meet Lord Chaitanya. So he came actually the next generation, or maybe one generation or a generation and a half later. So this is his song of separation. And the way it relates to us is that we, let me see if I can change this. That back. So the way this relates to us is that we're feeling separation from a great devotee. Now, we may not all know this devotee, or we may know him more or less, but this is nevertheless, Bhakti Charu Maharaj is still, he was, and he is still one of the great pure devotees of our movement. Not just the ISKCON movement, but the movement that extends from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and from Sri Krishna. So what does that mean for us? I've been seeing various responses on the internet to his passing. And by the way, a couple of devotees, it kind of amazes me that, I guess due to the internet and just due to the interconnection of so many devotees, so many people, that yesterday morning, I received 2 messages from people that I had no idea that they were connected at all with devotees, maybe aside from me. And they said that they had heard that Bhakti Charu Maharaj had passed already within just 1 or 2 hours of his leaving. So this seems to have been received by an incredible number of people, and many people were moved that he is gone. He had a tremendous impact in this world, and the people who came in contact with him one way or another were impressed with him. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But so one of the reactions I've seen is that people who don't really know devotees very well, I've seen the reaction sometimes. They say, well, condolences to you for your loss. As if it were, and I'm thinking, well, this is kind of an interesting response, because it's as if it were something private that we feel, or something similar rather to another loss, maybe like a family person dying. So we all have family who have passed away, a parent or grandparent or brother, sister, even a child. So that certainly affects us deeply. But in this case, we may be deeply affected or not, but the idea of a devotee passing, especially one with whom we've had association, here Narottam Das in this song gives the example of separation. We have the great fortune of being connected with devotees in this world to give us just a little taste of the spiritual realm. It's not just that, devotee association that teaches us how to be detached from sense gratification or something like that. It goes the other way. If we connect with devotees, particularly the advanced devotees, then and I'm not just talking about the leaders of an organization, I'm talking about devotees who we find to be truly connected with Krishna consciousness, with Prabhupada, with Mahaprabhu, with Krishna. So when we're connected with those devotees, and generally it means connection in service. It's not just a sentiment, not just a sentimental connection or philosophy that, we discuss some fine point in the philosophy, but somehow connected through service, and we develop affection for those devotees as friends, or maybe we feel ourselves as less advanced, and we're inspired by that person to serve. That's the ideal situation, is to learn the lesson of humility and to be inspired to serve. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was such a person whose presence could inspire that. His own humility. Now let me talk a little bit about him, and maybe we can share with each other a little bit. His own humility was, it's obvious when you look at a person's face or a person's, I was just watching him this morning in some of his remembrances of Srila Prabhupada. So when you look at a person's face and you look into their eyes, it's pretty obvious, and their humility and their character. And then when you hear them speak, and when you perhaps know them a little bit, then you can understand, at least to some degree, their character. I mean, people hide things, but I think it's safe to say that Bhakti Charu Maharaj was a very transparent person. He was humble. Now, I wrote some words of praise on our WhatsApp group, and I knew Bhakti Charu Maharaj from the late 1980s. I was in India in 1984, mid-1980s. In 1984, I lived for 1 year in Calcutta. Well, Bhakti Charu Maharaj had his headquarters there at that time, and he's from Bengal. Either he's from Calcutta or I think he's from Calcutta. So he was raised in a nice family. I don't know what type of family, but he's well educated. He went to Germany for his graduate studies and so studied in Germany. So he was already sort of oriented toward the world and well educated, well brought up, and nice mannered, and really a gentleman. It's always nice to meet a gentleman, somebody who has good manners, somebody who has good qualities, but he wasn't an imitation gentleman. Sometimes you meet people in American culture, people tend to be very transparent, but I mean, they are what they are. But in other cultures, say South American culture or Indian culture, Middle Eastern culture, people put on facades. They're polite on the outside, but internally they may not be so polite. But so Bhakti Charu Maharaj was a very polite person, but you could look inside. If you knew him a little bit, you could look inside and you can see that through and through he meant it. He was really truly a gentleman. And so I got to know him a little bit during that year. And because I had been assigned, it was a project by the BBT to study Vaishnava history. It was for history of Vaishnava culture, which never got published. But our first task was we started with the Gaudiya Vaishnava branch. We wanted to cover all branches of Vaishnavism, but we started with Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So I traveled all over Bengal, and I studied different aspects of the culture, music and art and worship in the temples and the old temples, new temples, old movements, new movements, all these pre-Chaitanya history, post-Chaitanya history, food, all these things. So Maharaj liked it that I was studying the culture because Maharaj himself was very cultured, and he and I talked about the music a little bit, Drupad music, which is very ancient form of music, but that's not very important. The important thing I think was that this somehow gave me an excuse to connect with this wonderful person, with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And somehow he appreciated me. I've been blessed with the good fortune of joining the movement at a very early time. So with some very exalted godbrothers like Bhakti Shri Maharaj and some others, they treated me nicely just because they, according to their conception, I was somehow their senior godbrother. But in actuality, that's really not the case. But somehow or other, that connection was there. And a third connection, I would say, was prominent because Bhakti Shri Maharaj, he didn't join early. He joined in 1976 or 1977, joined Prabhupada. So this was toward the very end of Prabhupada's presence. He was trained personally by Prabhupada, but he was also trained by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So he always had a great affection for Tamal Krishna, and as did I. So we shared that. We both loved Tamal, and we connected due to the culture, Vaishnava culture. And then I enjoyed very much his natural affection. In Indian culture, if you get to know somebody, when you get to know somebody, men are much more affectionate toward each other, and it's not considered like gay in the American culture. It's not just Indian culture, but some other cultures like Middle Eastern culture. It's much more intimate. And when I'm in a culture, I like to sort of be a part of that culture. I don't resist and try to cling to my sort of American attitudes. So being friendly with Bhakti Shri Maharaj meant that we sort of assumed this affection of being brothers. And so I'll say just briefly, when he joined the movement, it's hard to understand from the perspective of those who. It's a very historical thing for us who first joined. I watched Dayananda Maharaj, his analysis of this, which is very similar to mine. It's the history. It's when Bhakti Charu Maharaj first joined. Now, Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he was one of the first Indians to join, especially the first sort of cultured Bengali devotees. So Prabhupada immediately took him in under his wing as a Bengali gentleman, young boy, young man. He's the same age as me, 1 year older. So he would have been mid-20s or mid to late 20s, I guess, late 20s. And so when he first joined, Prabhupada was very pleased to see that he was an Indian boy. Now we don't understand. There's a tremendous presence, Indian presence in the movement. And sometimes even to the extent devotees complain that it's too Indian. But in the 70s, it was only Americans. So it was all Americans in India. And Prabhupada was very eager toward his final years. He really wanted to establish the Indian movement. And we see the fruits of that. Those who have been to India, we see the fruits of that ISKCON is extremely well respected in India. It's well respected as part of the traditional culture. But in those days, it had an American flavor. There were so many Americans. All the leaders were Americans, which was a wonderful thing. It was very attractive to Indian people to see that. But Prabhupada was extremely eager to get solid young Indian youth involved, or not even youths, anyone. When I say solid, I mean a little cultured, a little educated, not just the sort of the ordinary, everyday type of person. Not that there's anything wrong with those people, but somebody who could actually lead, who could make an impression among other people. So Bhakti Charu was such a person, along with Lokanath Swami. So Bhakti Charu, so Prabhupada gave him first and second initiation in the same initiation. So he came to the movement, and then a few months later, he was initiated, first and second initiation. Not like today, you have to wait. Sometimes I've heard Radhanath Swami makes you wait a couple of years or something. And then 3 months later, sannyas. So just like Lokanath Swami. Lokanath Swami got 3 initiations. First, second, Swami in the same time. Prabhupada was so eager that these young Indian devotees, Krishna Gopal was the only old devotee, Gopal Krishna was the only old Indian devotee. He had joined in Canada. And Prabhupada put so much pressure on him to step up and become a leader in India. So Prabhupada really wanted this Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and Bhakti Charu was Bengali, so they spoke the same language. So the culture, they shared a culture, Prabhupada and Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So there was a definite intimacy. I listened also to Bhakti Charu Maharaj's remembrances of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, sometimes he chastised him like anything. One of Bhakti Charu Maharaj's stories was that Prabhupada had taught him to cook this preparation. I forgot the preparation, the name, but it involved ghee and chilies, a lot of red chilies. So Prabhupada's stomach was not very good at the time, so Bhakti Charu cut back on the chilies, and then he brought the preparation. And he said that for 3 days, Prabhupada was chastising him. He said, "What have you done to this preparation? I taught you how to make it, and you've not made it properly." And then the next day, "What have you done?" And then Prabhupada would talk to other devotees would come in. "I taught Bhakti Charu how to make this preparation, and he's not made it properly." So after 3 days, finally Prabhupada said, in a kind of calm way, and said, "So why have you done this?" And he said, Bhakti Charu said, "Well, because I was worried that it would bother your stomach, so I cut back on the chili." "Well, why didn't you say this in the beginning?" I didn't want to talk back to you, Prabhupada. And the Prabhupada said, "No, the ghee and the chilies, they act together to counteract each other." So in this way, I'm saying that they really connected. And one devotee commented, Charyadev, Dayananda commented that Prabhupada treated him like a son. But a son, not that he just gave him favor or he treated him like spoiled him. Not that he spoiled him, but that sometimes he really came down on him hard to train him, to make him understand the seriousness. And the senior devotees, they could see what was happening. They understood, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Dayananda Maharaj, others. They could really understand what was going on. Prabhupada told him, Bhakti Charu Maharaj, to translate all of his books into Bengali, which Bhakti Charu Maharaj did. That was his first service. And then when Prabhupada left, Bhakti Charu Maharaj, of course, was sannyasi, and he had that certain position in society. Eventually, he moved into position of GBC and took charge of various projects. And after the initial the gurus departed, there were 11 gurus, and then after some time in the late 1980s, then more gurus were added, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj became one of the first of those. So that's something of the history of Bhakti Charu, and it's, I guess, just to sum up quickly, that's a significant, so Bhakti Charu Maharaj played a significant role in the history of ISKCON, really a unique role. Something like Srup Damodar Maharaj. I always appreciated Srup Damodar Maharaj because I saw that Prabhupada treated him in a very similar way. Although he never made Srup Damodar a big sort of GBC, he didn't select him as one of the gurus. When Prabhupada departed, he didn't. But Prabhupada really took Srup Damodar under his wing. Many of you don't know who I'm talking about. I mean, many of you, there's only a few on the call. But anyway, without going into who that is, there are certain devotees that Prabhupada understood could develop into pivotal, really important individuals in the development of the movement, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj is certainly one of those. So, in terms of Prabhupada and ISKCON, the history of ISKCON, the foundation of ISKCON, and the development of ISKCON, Bhakti Charu Maharaj holds an extremely key position. He holds, I guess that's redundant rather than extremely. He holds a key position. There are some other devotees that I would say, but without mentioning them, certainly he is one. So his significance in ISKCON history or ISKCON culture is tremendous. His character. So without having, without being able to follow through with really a good character, then he wouldn't have been so significant. But he was set up to be a key person in the history of ISKCON. And then he could follow through by two things. If he had good character, and if he were really a preacher of Krishna consciousness, if he had Prabhupada's similar desire to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, and those two things, most of us know that, yes, he did. He had that character. As I said, a true gentleman, truly humble. I saw one time that he was, during an initiation lecture, he was saying how, with such humility, he was saying how I'm just accepting these disciples on Prabhupada's behalf. He was so humble about his position, although in his own right, a very great man, a very great devotee, he just deferred to Prabhupada, taking the humble position in relation to his guru. So humility, elegance, quite an elegant person. He always dressed very nicely, kept himself well groomed, always always shaven. I appreciate that. Prabhupada chastised even devotees who grew their beards during Chaturmas, Prabhupada criticized. He said, we shave our beards and shave our heads. So I always appreciated that perspective. Although I don't reject devotees, it's none of my business to reject, but to somebody, for me, I have just, it's kind of an external thing, but just somebody who, like Bhakti True Maharaj, who kept himself always shaven, like Bhagwan Narada. I appreciate that. Bhagwan Narada he's always clean shaven. So that's something that pleased Prabhupada. And nicely dressed. He always kept himself, obviously simple dress. He wasn't an elegant dresser like Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, but it was nice traditional dress. And intelligent, obviously, well-read, intelligent. He was able to translate all of Prabhupada's books, and it's no simple matter. It requires knowledge. There's two Bengali languages. There's the Old Bengali. You can imagine that in English also we have sort of two languages. I'm not saying they're entirely two languages. It's like two dialects, just like the old language of Shakespeare. Shakespeare was something like, was it 1690? Is that right? You can nod, Bert. Is that right? Around late 1600s, late 1500s. Yeah, okay. So 1590, around that time. So 1590. So during the 1500s is when the original Krishnadas Kaviraj and the other Jiva Goswami and Rup Sanatan, that's when they wrote their literature. So the old Bengali is different from the new language, just as our English language. The language changes, and there was modern Bengali has a lot more Persian words, and the old Bengali has more Sanskrit. It's more Sanskrit oriented. So it's quite a feat. It requires really an educated person and an intelligent person to make decisions about words, phrases, how to communicate. So to translate into something, and then to strategize. It's another thing altogether to have the mind to strategize and to manage. He was given GBC responsibility for various places. In India, he had some places in Orissa and Bengal and even Seattle. I read that he was in charge of Seattle. So to be a manager, and then recently he decided to start a rural project near Orlando. So to have vision, to be a visionary, to be a strategist, to be an administrator, in my world, it's completely different from translating, from writing, from doing all of these sort of intellectual activities, then to be able to move to strategy and all these things. So personal character, without a doubt, such a well-behaved, pure devotee in the sense of personal character, and then to carry on Prabhupada's legacy of writing, translating on one hand, and administrating, strategizing on the other end. What a well-rounded devotee, incredibly well-rounded devotee. And then I'll just add actually, and then two more points, but I'll just add that this ability that Prabhupada had also to connect with others. Of course, in Indian culture, I think that there is this sort of this thing that's taught to people. It's a cultural component to have really personal connections, to make the to make that really, it's not necessarily friendly, but it could be friendly, but to make a very personal interconnection with somebody, it's not so common in our culture. It requires 2 glasses of wine for most people to make a connection in American culture. But in other cultures, it's a natural part. So certainly Bhakti Charu Maharaj had that within his culture, but beyond that, like Prabhupada, he was able to connect either friendly basis with sort of equal level people, or as spiritual master to disciple. So this is another way that he continued Prabhupada's legacy. Now let me conclude with this idea of separation. Now we're faced with separation, and I sang the song of Narottam Thakur at the beginning. And his departure is this model of separation. And in our philosophy, it's a funny word to say philosophy, because it's such a dry word. I mean, you know, there's philosophies of Nietzsche and all these nonsense people. It just goes beyond philosophy. It's the essence of our practice, of our emotions, of our life is separation from Krishna. And Mahaprabhu, his highest expressions were separation. So we have each other as friends, each other as people we can mentor ourselves, and people who are our mentors, people who are our gurus, and it's through these relationships that we get a little glimpse of the divine. And separation is a very important aspect. So if we can, even if we don't know Bhakti Charu Maharaj very well, we've either heard his lectures, we may have been around him a little bit, or we have just seen him on the internet, or even if we don't know him at all, still try to get this understanding of separation. We have somebody here in this world with us, and at first he's giving us the grace of Krishna, the mercy of Krishna, and then he's gone, and you can understand a little bit then about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's separation from Krishna and Radharani. So that's all I have, a little more than I had intended. So please, anyone who has anything more to share?
So I personally, I know that I met Maharaj on a couple of occasions because he used to come through Dallas, you know, a few times a year. But my ex-wife actually remembered him, and because I posted on Facebook that he had left his body, and she was saddened that, you know, that had happened. But I'm actually very grateful to him for his Abhay Charan film version of Satsvarup Maharaj's Prabhupada Lilamrita. I think I've watched it all the way through at least twice. And if if for those who don't know what that is, it's Prabhupada's biography, film version of his biography, and it's like Satsvarup Maharaj's Prabhupada Lilamrita. You get both a real sense of who Prabhupada is as a person, but also through the narration and the storytelling, you get a real deep understanding of Gaudiya Vaishnava, as you use the term philosophy, right? You get a real understanding of that, and it's really artfully put together. And he directed it, he wrote it, he produced it, and you know, I can remember when they were finishing the project in the early 2000s. I spoke with this devotee, and he was one of the cameramen, and he was saying that they had just this crazy hours, you know, of filming, and just, I mean, it was this amazing, this huge undertaking. But this is what, and for any of us, right, this would be this monumental achievement. We think, okay, this is my life's work. But for Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he did that after he had translated all of Prabhupada's works into Bengali. So this was like, okay, this is the next thing, you know, this is just the next thing, you know. So something like that. And something that you said, Dayananda Prabhu, I heard another devotee echo this morning, which was that, you know, Bhakti Charu Maharaj exemplified this idea of, if you love your spiritual master, then you serve the spiritual master, you know. And so that's, a lot of people identified that as his character, that he was really dedicated to serving Srila Prabhupada. So
Yes, it's been a while since I saw that. I believe it's quite long and serialized for television.
yeah,
right?
the whole thing is on, well, I don't want to say the whole thing, so don't quote me on it, but 45 of the episodes are in English on YouTube. They just actually 3 weeks ago uploaded the high quality video versions. You can find lower quality video versions of it, have been on YouTube for a while, but they uploaded like video quality versions of the episodes, both in Hindi and in English. So they're all on YouTube now for free. And I think, I don't think they have all the episodes up yet, actually, but they've got 45 of them up. So they're on Bhakti Charu Maharaj's YouTube channel.
Yes, quite
Yeah.
a few, and definitely, so devotees should watch those. It's definitely one of the important biographies, or if not, I mean, in a sense, because we're so visual these days,
Right.
it could be even the most important biography. Anyone else? Pardonne, welcome.
Hello? Okay, can you hear me? All right, good. Trying to turn my video on at least so I be a little bit more personal. I don't know how to do. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I had a couple of things.
I'm hearing.
Yeah, I haven't started yet. I have a couple of things I wanted to share. One was a particular verse. Actually, three things. I was actually up late last night. I haven't been sleeping so well because I've been starting a little endeavor.
Oh, can I just interject? Pardonne, we're honoring.
Yes.
We're honoring a great Vaishnava who just passed away from this world.
Yes, I just noticed that. I met him in Houston.
Oh, good.
Just saddening. Yeah.
I'm
Very
sorry.
sad.
I just interrupted Bhagavan Nara because I wanted to make sure you knew that. So please.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I was up chanting a little bit last night, and I was outside, and my first point, I was looking at the moon, you know, and it was just so big and effulgent and bright and amazing, you know. And I never really seen the moon like this. It's a little sentimental, and I was just thinking how much lack, I guess, of appreciation and familiarity that we get with these things that are so far out, you know, especially when it comes to nature. We don't see that this is a very powerful entity. The sun, the moon, these are the things that are keeping us alive and keeping us going. But to us, it's just time to go to bed or it's time to wake up. And I was thinking about that in terms of devotees too, like understanding, like, yes, like you said, the philosophy, but Is it really the philosophy, or is it just somebody who's exhibiting higher degrees of our true identity and our Sanatan Dharma? Is it somebody who's exhibiting all these pure qualities that a Vaishnava has? And how often I think we take those for granted, not knowing that, you know, you can have somebody, a famous celebrity, and they can come in and they can be worshipped by hundreds and millions and billions. And of course, that's based off of exploitation, and everybody thinks that they're super successful and people follow them. But then you can have somebody like Maharaj, who literally is making everybody more Krishna conscious just by coming in contact with them for a few seconds, you know? And I'm getting to my point, which was Maharaj really had this way. We were at the GBC college, so we took a little road trip with the group. That's when you were there too, Dayananda Prabhu, when you gave that class. And we saw Maharaj, I think, last September. And then I saw him again in November when he was doing our residency for the GBC college, and he was there for 2 days, or I think 2 days. But his part of the module was just Srila Prabhupada. And I was thinking, like, he's going to talk about Prabhupada for 4 hours straight, you know? And he just did it so elegantly. And the first word that just comes to my mind is just, it was very graceful, like a swan, you know? It's just very elegant the way that, and there are some students there that were really giving him some difficult questions, nothing philosophical, but talking about, you know, the different trials and controversies in ISKCON. And I have all of this recorded. I'm probably the only person that has the audio recorded. I had my USB there. And Maharaj was very truthful and honest, and he didn't take it personal. And then sure enough, we were invited. We were supposed to go on a retreat to Dayananda, where his farm was, in April, but that of course fell through with everything. But just those few hours or days of seeing him and spending time with him, I just wanted to further go back to the point that it's, yes, there's the philosophy, but then there's these devotees that actually embody that, and we can become very familiar with it to where it's just like, okay, I'll just go on YouTube, I'll cook my lunch, and I'll listen to the class, and I'll just turn it off, and I'll go and I'll have my lunch, and da-da-da-da-da. But like, actually understanding that every word that's coming out from the lips of these devotees is purifying us. Coming in contact with Maharaj just for 30 seconds and asking him a basic question, or somebody like this, a devotee like this, is enhancing our Krishna consciousness. And I think that the saying is the devil's in the details. Those are some of the details that we should become more appreciative for. That's what I'm striving for. So I really appreciated that point. And I had a particular verse that I wanted to read from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is about, Prabhupada mentions the word swan. So he says, the devotees who have a relationship with Krishna are like the swans and chakravaka birds who play in that forest of lotus flowers. The buds of those lotus flowers are the pastimes of Krishna, and they are edibles for the swan-like devotees. Lord Sri Krishna is always engaged in his transcendental pastimes. Therefore, the devotees follow in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can always eat those lotus buds, for they are the pastimes of the Lord. And I really felt the ecstasy coming from Maharaj's heart when I was around him. I could feel his heart. I don't know what it was. I couldn't put a name or sloka, but you can really feel the love that he had for his spiritual master in Srila Prabhupada. So just a few things that I would like to share. It's a huge loss. And I wanted to go back to one more point, which was something I texted you. And I said, Dayananda Prabhu, like, I was in the shower and I was thinking about Maharaj, because at first when I saw the message, I was before I forwarded it, I just thought that he was still going through his situation. And then when I looked at it again, I said, wow, I got another one after that. I said, he did leave his body. So I was showering and I was thinking, and I thought, like, these devotees cannot be replaced. As they're leaving now and as they're moving to different services, we're not going to have devotees that had direct connection with Srila Prabhupada. And I was thinking, like, what do we do? What does my generation do? We're going to be lost. There's going to be quarrel. There's going to be assuming. There's going to be all sorts of things. And then Dayananda Prabhu made a very strong point, which where it's time for us to actually step up. You know, you mentioned Narottam Das Thakur. He had no direct physical association with Lord Chaitanya. I think 14 or 15 years later, after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, Narottam Das Thakur came. And then I thought about when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had no association with Mahaprabhu physically. Srila Prabhupada had no association with Bhakti Vinod Thakur physically. But through the literature and the teachings, we're able to associate with these devotees. And we should really take advantage of that as well. Vapu and Vani are non-different. So we have no excuses to actually step up and take over where they're leaving off. Whatever we can do, whatever little we can do, it's a mission that won't be stopped. It's just, do we want to get that credit for it? And do we want to become qualified? Do we want to make that extra endeavor? Do we want to tolerate difficult situations? We can talk about Maharaj's glories, but still none of us will understand the amount of tolerance and difficult situations that he had to get through to achieve all these things. You know, you briefly mentioned on it, long hours on the set, but imagine actually being on the set and orchestrating these things. I'm sure he went through so many difficult situations, and then to still walk out of it on the other side with a smile and elegance is just mind-blowing to me. So those are just some thoughts that I had. It's just like, to become that elevated of a devotee, it's not something done cheaply, and it's not something that's done overnight, and it's not something that's done alone. So we're very fortunate to have this time to reflect. So thank you so much, Dayananda Prabhu, for sharing all of your reflections and your association that you had with Maharaj, living there for a year. And even in Houston, it was nice to see y'all speaking together like friends. You know, I found it really, really sweet just to be able to see that for a moment. Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else? There's many other of these types of eulogies going on already, starting from early. I saw in Durban, South Africa, there was something, and the ongoing, I don't know how to say it. What is it called in Florida? I think there's an ongoing something honoring Bhakti Charu Maharaj among his disciples and so forth. Everyone is making Giriraj Swami and so many others. So if you like, there are all those.
I wanted to talk about Tuesday. Tuesday, we're going to be doing some observance too of Maharaj's departure. So we're going to cook. Devotees can pick up some khichdi. We're going to cook another khichdi dish. And then we're going to have, I guess, a little talk online as well, Dayananda Prabhu. Would you like to do that?
I didn't know about talk. Yeah, I guess so. We could do that.
We usually have something on Tuesday. If not, then I can have maybe Narottam Prabhu doing it, or whoever, if you'd like to do it. Maybe some short observance or something. We have our talk, but we were going to make some khichdi for everybody to come and pick up and do it as a simple offering, acknowledgement, and observance of Maharaj's departure. So I'll post that in the group as well. And that'll be sponsored by Kurt. Kurt sponsored that one. I have his donation from the last time, so we'll use that to feed everyone.
Thank you, Kurt. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I guess we'll conclude here. Thank y'all so much. Hare
Krishna.
Jai Prabhupada.
God.